Okay, I think we're ready to go. Welcome to ATARC's Thursday After Lunch webinar series. My name is Tom Suter. I'm the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. And today, the title of what we're trying to talk about today is Embracing a Data-Driven Future. And I hope everybody had a great day yesterday. It was fantastic. There's nothing like the peaceful transition of power that we do here in the United States. It was just a great day overall, and I hope everybody had a chance to catch all the highlights there. But and I think that with this last year taught us anything about embracing a data-driven future, that we've seen that requirement from our constituents. So really excited about the panel today. I'd like to welcome all the attendees. Special thanks to Brianne Paliukaitis and Nick Saki and the rest of the Pure Storage team. They've always been a great partner to ATARC, and we've really leveraged them for their expertise in this area. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to hear from the panelists, and then we're going to have a Q&A, and we're definitely going to pop in a few poll questions and try to open this up to questions. Just real quick, we've been doing this at least for the near term. We can't really talk about the solar winds just because of the sensitivity, and it's kind of like being in a crime scene in progress. And we know we want to address that, but I think the government right now is, trust me, they're working on it and they're putting their resources on it. But we don't want to put our panelists in a position to talk about it at this time. So if I can get all my panelists to turn on their screens, I think we have somebody in unmute, and we'll do some real quick introductions, and then we'll go into, before we go into a deep dive. So maybe we'll start off with the first panelist is Beth Puchek. She's Chief Data Officer at United States Citizen and Immigration Services. How are you doing today, Beth?
Hi, Tom. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. And where is home? It looks like you're working from home. I don't want to presume, but.
I sure am. I'm up in Howard County in Maryland.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming today. And then next up, we have Kirsten Dalbo, who's Chief Data Officer of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, and welcome back, Kirsten.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And where do you hail from?
I'm in Rockville right now.
Okay, we got the Maryland side taken care of.
Yeah, definitely.
Next, we have Andre Mendez, who's Chief Information Officer, United States Department of Commerce. Hello, Andre.
Hey, hello, and another one from Maryland. I'm in Germantown, Maryland. So glad to be here, and look forward to the overall meeting.
Yep, always good to have you back. And
thank you.
At least I'm at Northern Virginia, and I know I put on a few pounds since COVID, but I don't know if I can outweigh the Maryland folks yet. I've done my best to try to do that over this last year. Next, we have Thomas Beech, Interim Chief Data Officer, United States Department of Commerce. Thomas, we have you by phone today. You're on mute.
Hey, Tom, this is Tom. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, sir. How are you doing today?
Excellent. I've overcome the double mute, which is a thing. Thank you for having me. And I apologize, I'm having some technical issues with getting into the actual webinar itself. But
okay.
I actually born and raised here in DC, so I'm over here in Southeast.
Oh, fantastic. Good. We don't want to forget DC in all this.
Yes.
Next,
people actually live here.
Yep. And next we have Ken Clark, who's Chief Data Officer, Assistant Director of United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, over inside of DHS. How are you doing today, Ken?
Doing great, and hello everybody. Apologize, I'm having to dial in. I'm having technical problems as well, but hailing from Virginia. Hope everybody's well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Ken. I appreciate that. And last but not least, we have Nick Saki with Pure Storage. And wow, you look like you're at corporate HQ there in California or something, right?
Digital magic, Tom. I'm in Falls Church, Virginia, as a matter of fact.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, we'll get right into it. Maybe we'll start off with you, Beth. Let us know. One of the things that we did about 5 years ago was we had our big data summit, and we were talking about the rise of the chief data officer. And I think we are really actually getting there where the CDO is getting to be a recognized position across the agencies. But I'd love to hear your experiences over there at USCIS.
Sure. Like we mentioned, my name is Beth Puchek, and I am the second Chief Data Officer here at Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is also part of the larger Department of Homeland Security umbrella. I've been here since 2018 and have been part of the stand-up of USCIS's first Office of the Chief Data Officer, but I have been in the department and spent most of my time with Customs and Border Protection for the past 10 years. So it's very, the role of the CDO is very mission specific to the agency. And consequently, I'm very fortunate because USCIS is a data agency. Last year, we received close to 8 million applicants for immigration benefits. And being a fee-funded agency, we use data to forecast how many receipts we'll get, so we know how much revenue that we'll receive, so that we know how many and what type of staff we need, and so on and so on. Plus, we're also one of the most FOIA'd agencies in the federal government, so we are constantly peppered with questions about a variety of topics, and our data has to be accessible and reliable. So I'm a structural engineer by training, but a systems engineer by experience. But consequently, that makes me really passionate about analysis, process, and visualizing abstract concepts. And really, it's that passion about visualizing abstract concepts that brings purpose to both analytics and data management. And it's been an important driver for our development of successful relationships between both business and IT. So CIS has been a place where not a lot has been written down over the years. So really documenting our data has allowed us to socialize it with a much wider audience.
Yeah, I don't think you're the only agency in there. And my first major faux pas, probably won't be my last. I forgot to introduce Emily Barbero, and she's Deputy Chief Data Officer, Branch Chief, Office of Intelligence and Analysis over the United States Department of Homeland Security. Sorry about that, Emily. My understanding is you're at work today. Stuck somewhere.
Completely okay. It's completely okay.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear what you're doing there. If you could just introduce yourself. And are you working out at the office today, I think?
Yeah, but I'm with you from Northern Virginia. That's where I'm based normally. But yeah, I'm at INA, so the intelligence community arm of DHS.
Yeah, that'd be great to hear your perspectives on what you've been doing this year and maybe a peek at the future.
Yeah. So right now, actually, we've stood up and separated our data and analytics functions separate and apart from our chief information officer. And so we've established a division under that and really kind of ramping up where we fit in the space within DHS is being that bridge between the department and the intelligence community. And we, from the CDO perspective, manage what our responsibilities are on the classified domain. So we take a lot of best practices from the intelligence community and put those in place within the department. So we work with a lot of the components and the components data to make it shareable and accessible, both technically and from a policy standpoint.
Great, thank you for that. And next we'll go with Kirsten. You want to tell us a little bit about what's going on at FERC?
Yeah, sure. Right. So I'm Kirsten Dalbo. I'm the Chief Data Officer at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I'm the first CDO here at FERC. And thanks so much for having me. This is such an important topic and really near and dear to my heart as a CDO. And Beth, I just have to say, I'm a civil engineer by training and a systems engineer by experience. So maybe there's something to that sort of civil and structural place that makes us think about data and how to organize it. So, we've been given such a huge opportunity with the Evidence Act and the Federal Data Strategy to mature the data capabilities and build broader awareness on the importance of data outside of the data practitioner community, and to really push for that data-driven future. So I love the title of today's session. So some focus areas that we've been focusing on at FERC, as well as sort of cross-agency is, I guess I want to touch first on the cross-agency collaboration area, since I am part of our first federal CDO council. I am the small agency representative on the CDO Council Executive Committee. And that's a really important community that we are building right now. I mean, we're looking to improve our cross-agency collaboration, improve the data sharing, collaborate and idea share to identify the opportunities where we can divide and conquer and pull our resources on those key topics that impact all of us. I mean, we don't want to all invent the wheel on our own. And I would say another important aspect of that collaboration is the fact that the CDO Council is somewhat unique in that it invites the small agencies to the table. So, the CIO Council is limited to those 24 CFO Act agencies, but the CDO Council is open to all agencies. And so, the small agencies, we do represent an important and frankly pretty large community that's often not invited to the table. And I think we bring some exciting opportunities to the CDO Council in that while we might not have as many resources as the larger agencies, we have an agility that we can bring to the table and a flexibility that some of those larger agencies don't have. So it's been fun building that collaboration with the other CDOs. And then within FERC, I mean, big focus areas are really around building and maturing data governance, which is a huge area where we're building the coordination across the entire data lifecycle. So that's how we coordinate on the policy and rulemaking aspects of the information collections from the public, how we also coordinate on those data creation activities, partnering with our digital services and application development teams, the coordination on data access controls with the ICANN teams, working with the analytics teams on how we can facilitate better data use, and then the data retention and disposal activities. We're also doing a lot around data stewardship, making sure that our data stewards know and can perform their responsibilities as stewards on their data assets, their data sets, their data elements. We're also looking a lot at how we can create and define a good data product governance lifecycle, sometimes called analytics governance, so that we can set the right governance expectations depending on where a product is in its lifecycle. So like a proof of concept in its innovation kind of R&D stage, we want to have very minimal, if any, governance to allow for that freedom of innovation. But as something moves through the life cycle towards that full operating capability, we want to ensure that we've ensured that there's authoritative and trusted data, that the data is defined, understood, agreed upon, that the data is fit for purpose. So we're having a lot of those conversations. And then, finally, a big third area is in building our analytics platform so we can really leverage the power and scalability of the cloud. This is such an important part of the strategy because it really is kind of that physical instantiation, that tangible delivery of the data strategy and the data governance activities. We use a lot of cake baking analogies with my team, and so I'll use a cake baking analogy here where, governance activities are often focused on understanding ingredients and recipes, but without a kitchen to cook in, you're not going to get very far with your ingredients and recipes. So we've also been putting a lot of thought into our analytics platform, the roadmap for that, and making sure that we can deliver that fully equipped kitchen, the data prep and ETL tools, the metadata management, the data science notebooks, the modeling tools, and the analytics and visualization tools.
Is that all? No, I'm just kidding. That was fantastic.
I love talking about this
Thank
stuff.
you for that. No, that's great. And I love the kitchen analogy. Unfortunately, I can't bake or cook, despite having the best kitchen you can have. It hasn't come to me yet. So anyway, thank you for that. We'll get back into more the small. I think what you said about the small agencies is a really good opportunity that I'd like to get into a little more. And next, we are going all in on the Department of Commerce. Let's start off with Andre Mendez, Chief Information Officer at U.S. Department of Commerce. And I remember, Andre, the first panel you were on with me was that event we had at the Council for Foreign Relations when the administration was talking about their IT policies. I think we're going to have to do that again. That was a lot of fun, but good to have you here today.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So my background is not in civil engineering, but in a different type of engineering, genetic engineering. Sort of the first and I think still the ultimate data repository for all of us as we continue to move forward in the evolutionary cycle. So I believe one of the maybe the only one here who's not a CDO. I've taken on that role in the past, but almost by default because it didn't exist, and so it was an integral part of the CIO office. And CIOs in general, but I'm a big believer that it should not be under the CIO office, that it should be on its own, because there is sort of an essential role for data in the business side of the equation, whether it is in the federal government or in the private sector or nonprofit, that really should be driven by the business. And I'm a big believer that the CIO probably needs to continue to have a substantial role in the metadata and all of the backend associated with the data itself, but not in the data itself. It is absolutely essential that the business be the driver of that. And so I've encountered some resistance with some of my colleagues who believe that that should fall under the CIO, but I find that to be a little bit sort of I don't want to say old-fashioned, but I'll say it old-fashioned because you know there are just different needs that are now must be driven by business and by the operations side of the house. Been involved in a lot of very interesting projects with massive data analysis dating back to the early 80s with the Security Exchange Commission and all of the financial data, with health promotion data, with antibiotic resistance data, and also with content, digital content at PBS, where we really completely changed the equation from the back end in terms of thinking of data, of content as films and movies and series, and thinking of them as data and metadata that therefore could be utilized and reutilized and you know, and diced and spliced and everything else, to use the kitchen analogy there, so that they could be, you know, part of streaming environments and everything else. So we did a lot of the seminal work in that. And so now glad that that somebody else is handling the data side of the equation at the Department of Commerce, which is probably a great segue to Mr. Beech.
I think you're right. Thomas, it would be great to hear about how you work together with Andre. How does that work? You know, and tell us a little bit about your day job, but how does that dynamic go? Because what Andre said probably about 5 years ago is complete heresy in the federal government. So.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, great. So yes, thank you for that. And to build on what Andre said, so yeah, a couple things I'll try to tackle here. Day to day, and it speaks to what Andre said about business value. One of the important things about commerce is the unique family that it is. And what I mean by that is the 11 or 12, depending on how you count it, bureaus and offices that are very autonomous. They range from Census, which many of you know of, Bureau of Industry and Security, which has the no-fly list, things like that, BEA, Economic, NOAA, Scientific, Satellite, Patent and Trademark, Innovation, NTIA, which is a telecommunications, Minority Business Development, so NIST, the standards and technology. So as I say this, it's important to note that the autonomy and the fidelity to each bureau and office's mission is really important. And the way I see this role and how we work together is to inform one another, but most of all is to collaborate across all bureaus and offices, line offices, et cetera. And that's within a bureau all the way to HQ or headquarters. And how do we do that? That's through our Commerce Data Governance Board, for which representation of all the bureaus and offices, and within HQ, which is headquarters, the CIO office there, general counsel, policy, And we do that because some of the family members are under the umbrella of enterprise services, and some are completely autonomous for very good reason. So there's no goal here to reach in and make a monolith. What our goal is to facilitate through communities of practice how best, one, to learn from each other, two, look within. We have an incredibly rich inventory of data. And oftentimes it's really just found within. You go all the way out of the department to find out actually it came from census or came from somewhere else. So say that because part of our data strategy and building it out really has a consensus model of awareness, accessibility, and really this mantra of commerce helping commerce. How can we help each other out? Because again, the interesting thing is having all these different missions. The challenge is how do you make them all make sense? Same with the data standard, right? How do we make a data standard work across all when, you know, there's such uniqueness to the data sets themselves. So on a daily basis, it's a lot of listening and working with other bureaus and offices. We are 50,000 plus at the department, and the CDO office at best has been 3 or 4 people. So I do like the point about what Kristen said about the small bureaus and office, and we talk about this at the CDO Council, that it's interesting to say small bureau and office when you can say a large department that has a small CDO office, and it can be the vice versa. So I just say that to add into the whole analogy here about the different types of cooking here.
Thank you for that, Thomas.
Sure.
Next, we'll go with Ken Clark, who, just to remind you, is Chief Data Officer, Assistant Director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Ken, I'd love to hear your perspectives and how do you deal, you know, inside of DHS? How do you guys all collaborate and deal back to OCIO? How does it work? You know, that'd be one of the things I'd like for you to cover, please.
Absolutely, Tom. You know, we have a really close relationship in the department. I mean, working, you know, Beth and I have she's got the USCIS mission. I'm supporting the ICE mission, but it's all part of the big immigration mission space. So we work very closely, as well as working with Emily on the Title 50 type of information sharing. So a lot of it, you know, we were all created through the Homeland Security Act back in 2003. And one of the things that I think is unique for ICE and also helps us in the collaboration area is the way our Chief Data Officer organization is structured. I actually have within the office the Chief Privacy Officer. So we have all the privacy issues that we have to deal with. I have under my organization. We also have the records and data management. So we're dealing with the Federal Records Act. I have the FOIA team, and we're able to deal with all the requirements. The FOIA sometimes, you know, in excess of 100,000 can come in, and then dealing with the Evidence Act requirements under information governance. So with that structure, that gives me the opportunity to deal with a wide range of issues. Now, I am a peer to the CIO, and that's a good relationship as well. I know a number of models out there have CDOs working for CIOs and other structures, but this relationship works very well because it gives me a chance as a CDO to focus on business needs and the policy issues that affect data sharing. And as I mentioned, having the privacy officer and having the records officer and the FOIA officer on my team really helps to deal with the information management needs across the enterprise. And then working, of course, with the CIO on the information technology infrastructure and cloud environment implementation that we have. But again, we have a really good working relationship at the department, working with, of course, the Data Governance Council that has all the CDOs that we have. But some of the things we're also looking at to improve not only our ability to share data and work within the department, but also with our mission partners is, you know, interoperability is one of the biggest challenges, I think, in the whole data environment. And one of the things that we're doing is establishing a data standards program where we're actually even developing a data taxonomy. So a taxonomy that's giving a classification of our data into all the various high-level categories and subcategories based on the business needs and the business drivers. but also having a core that we call it the ICE core, which is essentially those common data elements that you would see across the organizations, name, date of birth, location. Those are common data objects that we can usually have an agreement on. Now, there's mission areas that you have some unique data requirements and data objects you're going to identify, but very much following what the National Information Exchange model has done through the years to really structure the data. We're also looking at things like functional standards as far as improving not only internal but interagency information sharing. I think everybody's aware of the nationwide suspicious activity report reporting construct, the See Something, Say Something, which was a very successful program of developing a functional standard that looks at the business, the policy, the technology needs, and standardizes that across all the various partners that are in that. So we're looking at that, and that's going to be very instrumental in improving the sharing within the department and our mission partners there, as well as outside. We're also, we have a data governance board established. We've developed a data strategy, and now we're working on a data strategy roadmap, which helps guide our activities and the directions that we're going. And then also recently developed a information sharing and access agreement policy, our directive, which will essentially identify roles and responsibilities and practices on how to do sharing of data outside of the organization in a bidirectional manner. So I think that's, answering to what Tom, what you were asking for. I think, we have a blend of governance, and we've also put an inventory together of all the 51 systems that we need to keep track of, because you really have to know your data. And the way you know your data is what's out there, who owns it, who has it, and then also bringing in the technology. So it's a well-rounded approach that we're looking at data management. And again, that is all working in partnership with our colleagues at the other components at DHS and in the interagency, as well as state and local, I should say, too.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because you have to deal with so many external stakeholders as well as your internal stakeholders. Thank you for that, Ken.
Absolutely. And
we'll get on to you to questions. And last but not least, we have my friend Nick. Nick, I think this conversation is very interesting, and I would love to get your take, because you've been in government, in the Department of Defense. What have you seen is the relationship between the CIO and the CDO? Whose infrastructure, who's handling the data, and how does that all work together? I'd love to hear that, as well as anything else you want to bring up.
Sure. So I've been around long enough to see, CIOs rise to prominence and really rule the entire information operations domain, and then to see the supporting specialization for chief technology officers, chief data officers, and the really specialized functions that make organizations work. And the federal government at large, and you can do this in any given agency, generates and consumes so much data that it becomes literally a domain unto itself. And the recognition of that has been the acknowledgement and the creation of chief data officer positions. The data is, the foundation and the principal commodity for decision making and policy making. It is the thing that we use in order to understand the world around us and to drive how our agencies are going to operate to affect their mission and achieve the goals that are mandated for them by statute, regulation, and policy. And so if data is, axiomatically the new oil, then infrastructure is its refinery. So I began my career in this as an intelligence analyst. I was not a civil engineer nor a geneticist. I actually dealt with data for decision making on a daily basis, and I worked my way from the keyboard end of the infrastructure to its core to understand how to deal with and process more and more quantities of data, which in and of itself is about as useful as a freshly harvested kernel of grain, pick a grain. you've got to do something with it in order to make it useful and relevant. And the processes that we had for doing that when I began were literally on paper. So the amount of information that we had access to, the way in which we could correlate it, enrich it, understand it, and then disseminate it were fairly limited. Computers changed a lot of that for us, and then there was an explosion in sensors. And when I say sensors today, and a lot of in the ISR trade, you're thinking about, things with cameras and antennae and so forth. But truly, every computer, every smartphone, every citizen with an ability to provide us with useful data becomes an ingest point for data into our larger decision-making and analytical systems. And what we've witnessed over the very recent years has been an explosion in network bandwidth and computational power, and an increase in the overall capacity of what we think of traditionally as storage systems to hold more and more data. The problem is that the time constraints under which we need to make decisions have gotten significantly shorter. So now that we can know things in near real time, we need to be able to act on them in near real time. But really critically, we need that data to be presented to us in a timely fashion so we can make those kinds of momentous, but also, ideally most optimal decisions. So that's why I've found myself working, in industry, in the portion of the enterprise that deals specifically with data service at the wholesale level. A baker buys flour in order to make bread, but a wheat farmer or a corn farmer are growing wheat and corn for any different number of variety of uses. So I deal with data as a wholesale commodity. And what we've seen across every endeavor in which IT is implemented for decision-making processes is a universal desire to accelerate the applications that our customers are using, whether they're internal customers or obviously constituents and services to the public, enabling a seamless infrastructure between on-premises infrastructure or private cloud and publicly available infrastructure or cloud service providers. How do you break down those barriers and really focus on the mobility of data and the accessibility of data, regardless of where it may happen to reside? Obviously, we've touched on it briefly at the top of the hour, Tom, I'm sorry, with data protection and modernizing that data protection from end to end. Not just securing the data, but also improving the resiliency of the infrastructure and the access to that data, fault tolerance at data center scale and beyond, and being able to leverage, or rather I should say protect the leveraging of that data across these massively scaled and connected environments. And the last thing that we're seeing is a change in the technologies that we have for processing data, principally driven by initially what we thought of as machine learning out of the Hadoop construct, to now a much more robust and I would say artificial intelligence methodology, where we're having machines actually do a lot of the data triage for us and the identification of relevance and things of that nature. Because the scale at which we can compute and the scale at which we can address data today has grown so vast, and the computational power has become available, we're now in an era in the nascence of cyber defense, as an example, where you're going to have machines defending your environment against machines that are attacking your environment, and they'll be doing it at a speed and velocity that only a few years ago was regarded as a realm of science fiction. I love science fiction because it conceptualizes abstract ideas and shows us what reality might look like, and that sparks our imaginations and drives us to do even more interesting and innovative things with our processes and our tools. But one of the huge challenges in government, because they operate the most immense IT infrastructure and the most diverse mosaic IT infrastructure in the world, has been the cost of operations. So the fifth element of what we see across all industries is the desire to be able to sustain the platform, to grow technologically forward, innovate forward, but while canceling technical debt. So you're seeing a very wide-ranging change in how IT is offered for consumption, as much as we're seeing a change in how it's actually implemented and what it's used for. So that's Now, those are the things that particularly from Pure Storage's perspective, we've aligned ourselves to create that capability that assures obviously improvement in performance, much better security, much better interoperability across platforms, and then technical debt cancellation, or really, a much more consumable method of obtaining and then sustaining the technology investments of government agencies, and of course, our large enterprise customers as well.
Thank you for that, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting to get some questions, and we got a poll question coming up here pretty soon, so I'm going to set the table for the poll question. But maybe I'll start off with you, Andre. How are you looking at artificial intelligence, and what have you been trying to implement in that area, RPA or object recognition, or where's your head at on where you're headed inside the Department of Commerce with artificial intelligence?
Well, we believe that it's going to be an absolutely essential component to the the substantial majority of things that we do at Department of Commerce. We have such a wide breadth of and scope of operations with massive data analysis, with massive data collection, and of course with cybersecurity needs that are absolutely enormous. Where the ability to leverage artificial intelligence to take away, some of the most exacting and speed essential tasks is absolutely crucial. It would be impossible for us to effectively, leverage all of the data that we have without having the ability to analyze it at the machine level, to have some degree of constant knowledge enhancement of patterns and pattern recognition, so that we can then move forward with our charter. I mean, you look at everything that, for example, NOAA is doing from a weather prediction standpoint, and the data is fast and furious. The sensors are everywhere, and the necessity to have immediate output is absolutely essential, because if you're talking about tornado recognition and warning systems, a couple of minutes make all the difference in the world. And so those types of things are absolutely essential for us. On the other side of the equation, because we have an organization like NIST, we also need to be absolutely involved in all of the things behind the scenes of artificial intelligence in terms of standards to be applied across, artificial intelligence deployments, operations, and everything else associated with that. So at the Department of Commerce, we have, a variety of ways in which, the handling of artificial intelligence and the deployment of artificial intelligence is going to be absolutely essential for everything that we do going forward.
No, that's great. And NIST, by the way, has done a great job supporting the president's executive order, and they're essential in all this. And, you at Commerce have a really wide variety of agencies there, probably more than a lot of other folks. Beth, why don't we go over to you and at USCIS, interested to hear how you guys are using these new tools.
Yeah, to the example of robotic process automation, that was last year, calendar year 2020 was a big year for us. We established an RPA Center of Excellence that really helped us establish the relationship between OIT, the OCDO, and all of these really excited and willing partners that wanted to automate really redundant processes. So last year we stood up our governance model. We started to build out our infrastructure and our pipeline to be able to roll out our bots, and started to actually automate some of these bots. So right now we're operating attended bots. So really just speeding up the manual work that individuals have to do. And this year we're focused on getting to the unattended bots. and getting beyond. We started slow. We wanted to start with more of the administrative type tasks to automate. And this year we'll start to pivot not just into the unattended bots, but also into some more of our operational processes.
Thank you. And Kirsten, we'll go over to you over at FERC.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, we're really focusing on the data governance pieces right now in terms of cataloging our data assets to make sure that we have the well-defined, well-understood data. There's also a lot of initiative under the CIO right now related to IT modernization and application layer modernization activities. And so there's a strong partnership there to make sure that the data standards that we're defining through the governance process will be applicable through and built into our IT modernization activities. And this will set a really good foundation such that we can get more into that kind of machine learning and artificial intelligence space so that we can kind of get into kind of the operational type data where we can do kind of more automated work in case tracking and optimization of resources and scenario modeling of our resources to make sure that we're balanced across all of the activities and the different program offices and how the different needs are being met. And then also just thinking about our mission space. I mean, FERC regulates the energy industry. So, you know, are we documenting, cataloging our data well enough and tracking this data in an efficient enough way that we can start anticipating failures on the grid based on a series of, you know, criteria or scenarios that help us see those things coming so that rather than being reactive, we can be more proactive. There's also a fair amount of text analytics in this space and natural language processing that we're looking into because a lot of the information comes to us as text rather than any type of like data feeds. So being able to get that information more quickly than kind of combing through emails or text files. So those are the kinds of things that we're really looking at. But right now we're kind of in this foundational space, building out that data governance, building the data maturity and literacy to make sure that we're well positioned to move into these areas.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world to me. Emily, I would love to hear a little bit about in your world, what tools you're starting to use.
Yeah, so we are working right now with natural language processing a fair bit. What we find is that there's a lot of inherent kind of intelligence value in kind of the supplementary documents, the handwritten things, the notes that provide a lot of intelligence value. And so that's kind of a growth area for us. We're also looking at the process automation piece because for us, and I'm probably pretty sure that my DHS colleagues would agree that we don't want necessarily the AI to completely take the operator or the analyst completely out of the loop in such cases where there's a decision-making requirement. So we're kind of looking at how do we make the analysts more efficient and more effective. And so we're looking at automation. Additionally, we're looking at capabilities that help us from a machine learning standpoint assess the risk calculus of some of our data. There's a lot of inherent U.S. persons information in DHS data, and we would like to build out machine learning capabilities that help us identify the likelihood that this individual may or may not be a U.S. person. And where that's really critical is when we're in this intelligence community space, making sure that we're protecting U.S. citizens appropriately. And so that's something that we're working on and building up over the course of the next year, where it's not necessarily kind of this cool operational widget, but it's really something that's needed from a data security and protection standpoint. But that's kind of the space that we're looking into. And then additionally, in the out years, we're building out our unclassified infrastructure. So I call it, I do cooking analogies too. I call it the cake layer. So we need to build out that cake. Everyone always cares about the frosting and the sprinkles of the analytics, but we're building out our unclassified environment to support more robust kind of open source analytics over the course of the next couple years. And that's kind of been further expedited given the whole COVID situation. So we're looking forward to that as well.
No, thank you for that. And Ken, do you want to add anything to that? What you guys are doing? One thing that I've seen some agencies, they have like a data and analytics working group and they have an AI working group. How do you, do we put these together? Are they the same thing? How are you doing it at DHS?
Well, over at ICE, yeah, so from the, and I really have to, foot stomp a point that Emily pointed out that, with AI, it cannot solve all the problems, and you have to have the human aspect, the human dimension in there, particularly in the law enforcement. Law enforcement is a human-to-human activity, and then of course developing the case. You've got to have the human interactions on the developing the cases. But from our standpoint, we have, as others have mentioned, we did a pilot with natural language processing, and one of the things we've been looking at is how tools such as natural language processing and AI can help sift through just the vast amount of data that's out there. The old scenario of the needle in the haystack. Sometimes the kind of information you need is buried in just the vast troves of data that are out there. In fact, I think I saw a statistic that data in the world doubles every 2 years. So that's one of the challenges we have, and looking at AI and the natural language processing tools to be able to sift through and get that meaningful data. In answer to where you're saying this falls under from a governance standpoint, so at our data governance board, we do have, that is where we talk about the natural language processing pilot, some of the activities, some of the AI work. As the CDO, I am the AI point of contact for the agency. So that falls, I use the data governance board as the means to communicate with my colleagues in the other offices, to discuss opportunities and look what's out there. But we do have also some robust data analytics work, some of the tools that we're using over at our innovation lab. So, but that again, working closely with the program offices and using our governance process to just first of all, try to standardize efforts, but also try to get the word out to other offices that may not be aware of what tools are out there. And then I should also add that biometrics plays a big role in the opportunities there of being able to assist in identifying information for investigations and other type of enforcement activities.
Thank you for that. And Thomas with Department of Commerce, I would love to hear your perspectives on how you're organizing over there.
Right, thanks. And I'm actually going to switch hats if that's okay. Since I'm the interim CDO at Commerce, I'm also the Chief Data Strategist at the United States Patent and Trademark Office,
oh, wow.
which is a fee-funded agency. So I can speak about some of the work there that my team has done. And at a high level, the CIO shop, so the CDO or de facto that I am there is in CIO, but there's a fair amount of autonomy when it comes to data and analysis. So where we're headed is we look at, we're doing products as sort of a mantra in IT deliverables. So instead of projects, they are products. And we have a product called data and analytics. And that's where our Hadoop structure is. That's our big data lake. And basically there we were able to sort of use and reuse. And you mentioned earlier about using the unstructured world of a data lake. And where we ended up is patent applications, in particular, there's 600,000 a year. There's 13,000 examiners. That's a huge volume of text data. And there's something called a classification, which is not unlike the Dewey Decimal System. It's to tell you where a murder mystery is going to be in the library. So in that analogy, looking at innovation, we need to know where biotech fits in the schema, right, of the organization. So the biotech examiner gets the biotech case. Of course, complexity around technology merging is a big issue, and we continue to pay a substantial amount of money to have human curated classification done. And we have successfully implemented into production last year an AI system that can actually start classifying documents as to the technology. And there's algorithmically, there's a lot to go into that. That's a whole nother conversation. But the purpose here is that when you think about a word, and lawyers love to argue over what the word means, There's many ways to describe a technology. So the synonym issue is huge, n-grams, all that. So algorithmically, we've been able to lay out 250,000 models that constantly feed on the information to learn from it to figure out where the hierarchy is as to where the document belongs. And long story long, it's one and the same. The data and analytics, the understanding of data strategy, it's a push and pull. I think, if nothing else, certainly at Commerce as well as in bureaus, it's a push and pull to let the business or the pilot or the co-piloting occur at the business level. And what do we do in CIO or CDO? How do we provide data as a service, like a commodity, as mentioned before, without hindering sort of the good stuff of what the data-driven insight is? And it's a push and pull, right? Some line offices, some bureaus and offices are really great at it. Some just want to keep it simple, but they'd love to have more data skills training. And I'd be remiss to say, one of the key aspects of being a CDO that I've come to really appreciate is the world of data skills. And that, again, is a long conversation of what that means. But where I see the CDO role versus the chief learning officer or CHICO and CIO is that negative space of being able to listen, understand business needs, and share those requirements to the CIO to say, hey, I think what they're really asking for is a data strategy, not Salesforce writ large. So right. I just want to throw that in there on top of the new and shiny with AI, which is exciting. I'm also equally hesitant about it, but it can be done. I think it can be done measurably. The rollout is very slow and systematic. There's an ROI defining our success, but also along the way is this journey around data acumen that is just, everyone needs to participate on that one. And I think the CDOs can play a tremendous role as advocates on that.
Thank you for that, Thomas. And Nick, I did notice when Emily was talking about an analyst and getting all this data and you lit up a little bit. I did notice that, but love to hear your perspectives.
Yeah, I was thinking back to a few years back when I was still in the service, and one of the challenges before the intelligence community was that we were awash in a tsunami of data. And I thought that was, at the time, relatively accurate. But the truth of the matter is we're facing a rising, an ocean-sized tide in the increase of data. The doubling of data every 2 years is absolutely staggering at the scale we're talking about now. And with the ability to do integration of even more sensors at the edge and the advent of 5G communications and 5G networks, it's only going to become even more problematic. One of the most powerful things that CDOs do in conjunction with the technology platforms that they have is the creation of signal to noise filters. Finding what's relevant and being able to associate, correlate, and move that data forward is absolutely critical. And there's also the data custody piece. What do we have? Where is it? How do we get to it? What's valuable in it? And so many of these things become significantly more challenging as the data quantities simply rise in overall volume. So to that end, we are seeing tremendous advancements in the way we do IT operations and the way we do data analytics. The transformational changes really, are being, we're focusing primarily on AI and ML, but also just in the way we're able to deploy new analytic tools with DevSecOps environments. So the advent of containerization, as an example, enables us to deploy new analytic tools or new management components or new services in a much more iterative and much faster fashion than we ever did before. We don't have to rebuild entire infrastructures to do new things, which is a very significant change. You literally don't have to reinvent the wheel anymore. Cloud is making things easier in some respects, more challenging in others. We have, I believe, across government seen a willingness to embrace the economic model, as well as the employment of security models such as FedRAMP to ensure that commercial components actually meet the same sort of requirements for security, availability, and protection that we have instituted in the on-premises infrastructures in government. And then that ties also to the as-a-service sustainment model. So the ability to start consuming things on a subscription basis, use them as we need them, and then either continue that investment or stop it and redirect those resources to something more suitable to our challenges, have all been, huge from the perspective of the maintenance and the utility and then the utilization of data, and the adaptation of new technologies, especially. So there's, new tools come online for us to parse data at different scales, to visualize it in different ways. And all of these things are absolutely a boon to decision makers, and of course those who have to put the tools and processes and people in place in order to actually affect the outcomes that we're looking for. So it's always exciting to hear from somebody who works in the intelligence area, because fundamentally data is the stock in trade.
Yep.
It's what you use in order to derive your insights and then help drive decision making and policy making. So yeah, I kind of lit up because it resonated with me.
Thank you. Now I run the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, but I work for all the people that work with me, and Alyssa's getting mad at me because I need to do these polls. We're going to do some quick rapid fire polls and then wrap up with some final comments. Alyssa, you want to go with the first one? We'll just go rapid fire. They'll just take a second. Does your agency have an AI strategy implemented? Is the AI strategy properly resourced? Okay, we're going to give that about just a couple seconds. Last call. Let's go ahead and pull it up, see what we see. Interesting. Looks like we're all over the place. I would say that our resources are probably getting better. I think, we've gone a long way from the last, who's Mikey that's going to want to be the CDO of an agency to, I think it's being taken care of more seriously. And then I definitely want to go to the next two poll questions, and then we can just finish on a couple of thoughts here. Let's go to poll 2. What has proven to be the most critical area of the employment of the strategy? All right, that's a good one. All right. And we're going to publish these results as a takeaway. And then I got to go to the last one. There we go. People. It's about the people.
It's always people.
It's always the people. And one more about our AI infrastructure. And this is a good one. I wish we asked this one before. You guys came up with a good one. You guys came up with this one. All right. Okay. What does this engaging audience come up with? There you go. Interesting. Fantastic. So let's close with everybody. I think we got to make it pretty brief. This has been the fastest hour. I've been doing this like 30 some of these. This has gone by so quickly I didn't even get to the questions that we wanted to. But maybe if everybody could take 30 seconds to talk about what they think, what is their big thing they're going to try to accomplish in 2021. And we'll start off with the CIO of the group here, Andre. I would love to hear your perspectives quickly.
Well, I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, cybersecurity, has taken sort of a preponderant role because it's so bloody relevant to everything that we do and everything that we're trying to prevent other people from doing. And so, as much as I hate to admit it, it needs to be a continuing effort that consumes a substantial amount of our resources. But then we really want to get into a move away from all of our infrastructure investments. Even though we have bureaus that are 100% cloud-based, at least one, and another one at close to 90%, we still have an enormous amount of legacy environments that need to be taken care of. And so that is going to be continuing to consume our environment. People retention, enormous issue. We have a lot of people that are close to retirement and just retired, and we need to continually invest in that innovation that comes from some of the new folks that are coming on board and that might have some different and less fearful ideas about how to move things forward. So juggling that, having the combination of of operational reliability while at the same time driving innovation, as fast as possible, and taking calculated risks is going to continue to be our focus going forward.
Thank you for that. And Beth Puchek?
Yeah, in 2021, I think we're going to be focused a lot on implementation. For the past 2 years, we have built a lot of great foundational work in terms of developing close to 100 data standards to help bring interoperability across our systems and those of DHS. So implementing those finally. We've been working for the past year on developing a single source of truth data set so that all of the analysts across our agency can use one source for all of their reporting, so we're not arguing that my number's right, no yours is. And then we've been kind of paused on developing a lot of agency leadership level dashboards to give our executives the insight into production that they need until those data sets were ready. So really launching forward on those.
Great.
And then policy, again, policy takes so long, and getting those implemented and active.
Thank you. And Kirsten?
Sure. I mean, similarly to what others are saying, I mean, implementing these different strategies we've been talking about, I mean, we're looking to get a number of data products out into our full operating capability. We have a bunch in proof of concept and initial operating capability, but pushing to get those into full operating capability is going to be an important 2021 goal, just because it brings along a number of other things in terms of establishing the governance practices and the behaviors, the data stewardship, things like that. So by pushing for the delivery of these data products into full operating capability, it will bring along a number of other important aspects around governance to build that kind of practice and muscle memory for everyone. And then, we just saw it in the poll, customer engagement strategy is hugely important, because if our customers are not along the ride with us, we're not going to get very far. So constant engagement with our customers and building that relationship.
Great. Emily?
Yeah, so I think I could talk about all the engineering and governance and analytics stuff that we have planned, but I think what's really critical and kind of an enhanced focus for us is really looking at our acquisitions process and then our data literacy and really amping up those space. Analytics and data is very dynamic, and the acquisitions process is not necessarily supportive of that dynamic nature and the speed at which mission changes and the mission requirements come in. So that's kind of a focus for us, as well as the data literacy piece, so that the analysts and operators know about the data, they can use it appropriately, and they have the tools that enhance their mission, and also that feedback mechanism to us so that we can improve. So that data literacy piece is really critical for us, so that we have a workforce that is empowered.
Great. And Thomas?
Sure, thanks. In addition to completing the Commerce Data Strategy in the near future, one of the things we learned from last year's efforts around data skills assessment and maturity model assessment was hearing and listening to across the bureaus and offices that we don't have a baseline that provisions a level of data analysis for the private sector to jump from private sector to government. There always seems to be quite a jarring effect to folks to come into the federal service only to realize it takes 6 months to do this or 7 months to do that, and we don't do this and that, and for very good reason. The idea here is how do we listen and create a world where our scientists and economists are doing just that, as opposed to the data wrangling. So we learned through this process that we really have to hunker down and explore this idea of a baseline, and looking to our bureaus and offices on how to partner in that effort.
Fantastic. And Ken?
Yeah, I'd say really focusing on the data standards program, developing our taxonomy, and then also exploring the functional standards for a couple of key exchanges, not intra, but interagency. That's going to help document some of the policy and the process and the schema requirements. Also looking at data maturity model, not only to help put some measures and benchmarks into the growing our program, but also growing the workforce and helping to move the culture to more of a data-driven organization. Thanks.
Terrific. And Nick, I hear a lot of implementation. Where do you think we're going in 2021 with this administration and with government specifically?
Given what I've read in the press, that there's going to be a tremendous emphasis on technology transformation and modernization. They're talking about funding the technology modernization account or the fund to $9 billion, which is a meaningful investment in shoring up and improving the government's transformation and modernizing their enterprises. And I heard everybody on this call saying that, there's going to be a strong move to the cloud, which, is absolutely to be expected. From our perspective at Pure Storage, we're going to continue to create and enable the transition from storage and analytics to what we think of as a modern data experience, which really breaks down those silos, improves performance, provides the infinite scalable capacity, the cloud interconnectivity, and then the cost controls necessary to sustain that level of operations, but also do so with fiscal responsibility.
Great. Well, thank you all. Sorry we went a little bit over, but it was just, I couldn't stop this conversation. We thank you, Beth Puchek, Emily Barbero, Kristen Dalbo, Andre Mendez, Thomas Beech, Ken Clark, and Nick Saki. Thank you all for that great conversation. It's a great table setter for the year. The next event that we have is around data sharing as well. It's within the Department of Defense, and we've got a great panel. It's going to be next week, same time, same channel. And everybody have a great weekend and a very good 2021. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.